The Great Hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with the voices of hundreds of alien species. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for another routine meeting of the Galactic Council. The massive chamber stretched up so high that the ceiling disappeared into shadows. Ancient symbols covered the walls, telling stories of laws that had kept peace for thousands of years. Lisa Carter sat in the back section marked for observers. She wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, but she felt small among the giants, crystal beings, and floating gas clouds that made up the galactic community. Humans had only been part of this universe for 50 years, and most species still saw them as children who needed to learn how things worked. At the center of the hall stood Keeper HFY, a being made of living crystal that sparkled like diamonds. His voice rang out clear and musical as he began the ancient ceremony that opened every council meeting. Lisa had heard these words dozens of times, but today something felt different. We gather under the 3 sacred laws that have guided our galaxy for 10,000 years, HFY announced. His crystal body glowed brighter as he spoke. The first law: no species shall claim dominion over the homeworlds of another. The second law: trade and knowledge shall flow freely among all peoples. And the third law, most sacred of all: no species shall deliberately destroy or enslave an entire race, for such actions bring the wrath of the universe itself. Lisa noticed several delegates shifting uncomfortably when the third law was mentioned. The Vorthak representatives, tall beings covered in dark scales, seemed especially tense. Their red eyes glowed in the dim light as they whispered among themselves. Far away on the edge of human space, General Alex Murphy stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching stars through the wide viewport. His small fleet patrolled the frontier worlds where humans had built new colonies. These were peaceful places where families grew crops and children played in parks under alien suns. Alex was a soldier, but he preferred the quiet times between conflicts. His crew was young and eager, but they had never seen real war. The worst they faced were pirates and raiders who attacked supply ships. The Vorthak raiders had been getting bolder lately, but Alex assumed they were just testing human defenses. "Sir, we're getting reports of another raid on the shipping lanes near New Austin," reported Lieutenant Kelly Brown, his communications officer. She was barely 25 and had joined the fleet straight from the academy on Earth. "Same pattern as before?" Alex asked, studying the star charts on his screen. "Yes, sir. Fast attack, hit the cargo ships, then run before our patrols can respond," Kelly replied. Alex frowned. Something about these raids bothered him, but he couldn't put his finger on what. The attack seemed too organized, too planned. Pirates usually struck randomly, looking for easy targets. These raiders seemed to be studying human responses. Back on Nexus Prime, the council meeting continued with discussions of trade agreements and territorial disputes. Lisa listened carefully, taking notes on her tablet. As Earth's newest ambassador, she was still learning the complex politics that governed galactic society. During a break, she noticed the Vorthak delegation gathering in a private corner. War Prime Ketavor, their military leader, spoke in harsh whispers to his advisors. Lisa's universal translator couldn't pick up their words from this distance, but their body language looked aggressive. "They've been having many private meetings lately," said Ambassador Telnath, a friendly insect-like being from the Arcturus system. His forearms gestured expressively as he spoke. "The Vorthak are worried about something." "Worried about what?" Lisa asked. Telnath's compound eyes glittered. "Your people, I think. Humans expand very fast, learn very quickly. Some species find this disturbing." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard rumors that some older species didn't trust humanity's rapid growth, but she hadn't taken them seriously. Humans were still too small and weak to threaten anyone. In the Vorthak section of Nexus Prime, War Prime Ketvor met with his intelligence officers in a room protected from electronic surveillance. Maps of human space covered the walls, marked with fleet positions and colony populations. "The humans have established 47 colonies in the past 5 years," reported Intelligence Chief Vraktar, his clawed finger tracing the expansion routes. "Their technology advances at an impossible rate. They learn from every encounter, adapt to every challenge." Ketvor studied the maps with growing concern. The Vorthak Empire had dominated this region of space for over 1,000 years. They were used to being the strongest military force, the species that others feared and respected. But humans were different from any species they had encountered before. "Their response to our test raids has been Unexpected, Fraktar continued. Instead of backing down or negotiating, they adapt their defenses and become harder to attack. Most species would have requested protection from the Council by now. And their military organization? HFY asked. Unlike anything in our databases, they don't follow standard galactic military doctrine. Their tactics are unpredictable, and they seem willing to accept casualties that would break other species' will to fight, and Ketfor's red eyes narrowed. The Vorthak had built their empire by crushing opposition before it could become dangerous. They had destroyed dozens of species who might have challenged their power, but humans were expanding too fast, learning too quickly. How long before they become a real threat? He asked. Unknown, War Prime, but our projections show that within 50 years, human space could rival our own territory. Within 100 years, they could surpass us entirely. The decision was made in that moment, though Ketfor didn't speak it aloud. The Vorthak Empire had survived by eliminating threats before they matured. Humans would be no different. Back in the council chambers, Lisa watched the final ceremonies of the day. Keeper Zephai's crystal form pulsed with ancient light as he reminded the assembly of their duties to peace and order. The sacred laws exist not as mere words, but as fundamental forces of the universe, he intoned. Those who break them invite consequences beyond imagination. Lisa didn't know it yet, but these words would soon prove more prophetic than anyone could have guessed. In the depths of Vorthak space, battle fleets were already beginning to mobilize. War Prime Ketvor had decided that humans posed an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. The Vorthak called it preventive action. The Council would call it genocide. But the universe itself would call it something else entirely, the breaking of the oldest and most sacred law in the galaxy. As the council session ended and delegates began to leave, Lisa noticed the Vorthak group departing quickly and quietly. Something in their hurried movement made her uneasy, but she dismissed the feeling. After all, what could they possibly want with humanity? She would learn the answer to that question sooner than she ever imagined. 3 months after the council meeting on Nexus Prime, the Vorthak Empire struck without warning. Their massive fleets appeared simultaneously above every human colony in space. There was no declaration of war, no demands for surrender. The attack began with orbital bombardment designed to kill everything that lived on 47 worlds. Captain Ben Hayes was having breakfast with his family when the alarms started screaming across New Austin Colony. Through his kitchen window, he could see the peaceful farms and small towns that made this world home to nearly 2 million humans. His wife grabbed their 2 children while Ben ran to the emergency communications center in their basement. All military personnel report immediately, the automated voice repeated over and over. This is not a drill. All civilians proceed to emergency shelters. Ben kissed his wife and children goodbye, not knowing if he would ever see them again. As the colony's defense coordinator, he had to reach the command center before the enemy landed. The drive through town showed him scenes he would never forget. Families running for underground shelters while massive alien ships filled the sky above them. The Vorthak fleet was enormous. Ben counted at least 50 heavy cruisers and hundreds of smaller attack ships. His entire defense force consisted of 12 patrol boats and a few thousand marine troops. They had trained for pirate raids, not a full invasion by one of the galaxy's most powerful militaries. "Sir, we're getting similar reports from every human colony," reported Sergeant Mike Torres, his communications specialist. "They hit us everywhere at once. Earth Defense Command is trying to coordinate a response, but it's going to take weeks for reinforcements to reach us." Ben studied the tactical display showing enemy positions. The Vorthak weren't just attacking military targets. They were systematically destroying cities, farms, and even small villages. This wasn't conquest. This was extermination. "Get me a secure channel to Earth Command," Ben ordered. "Priority Alpha." While his technicians worked to establish the connection, explosions rocked the command center. The Vorthak had begun landing troops in the capital city. Through security cameras, Ben watched enemy soldiers moving from building to building. They weren't taking prisoners or securing territory. They were killing everything that moved. Admiral Kate Davis was in her office at Earth Defense Headquarters when the first reports started coming in. She had been reviewing routine patrol schedules and supply requests, the normal work of peacetime military command. The emergency alert that flashed across her screen seemed impossible at first. Multiple colony attacks confirmed. Her aide reported breathlessly. Vorthak forces have engaged all frontier settlements. Heavy casualties reported. Kate's blood went cold. She had served in the Earth Defense Forces for 30 years, but humanity had never faced anything like this. The scale of the attack was beyond anything in their military planning. "How many colonies?" she asked. "All of them, Admiral. Every human settlement outside the Sol system is under attack." Kate rushed to the main command center where dozens of officers worked frantically at communication stations. Giant screens showed the locations of human colonies, and one by one, the green lights representing peaceful settlements turned red as contact was lost. Dr. Sam Johnson had been studying alien cultures for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like the reports coming from the frontier. As Earth's leading expert on Vorthak society, he was called to the emergency briefing that Admiral Davis convened for Earth's leadership. "This doesn't match any known Vorthak military doctrine," Sam explained to the room full of generals and politicians. "They're not trying to conquer our worlds. They're trying to eliminate every human being on them." President Nancy Wilson, Earth's elected leader, struggled to understand what she was hearing. "Are you saying this is genocide?" "Yes, Madam President. The Vorthak are attempting to completely destroy humanity as a species." The room fell silent as the full horror of the situation sank in. Humanity had always known that space was dangerous, but they had believed the Galactic Council and its sacred laws would protect them from total destruction. On Nexus Prime, Lisa Carter burst into an emergency session of the Galactic Council, carrying evidence of the attacks. The chamber was in chaos as delegates argued about how to respond to reports of the massive assault on human space. "Honored representatives," Lisa shouted over the noise, "I present evidence that the Vorthak Empire has launched a coordinated attack designed to exterminate the human species." She activated her holographic projector, showing footage from the colonies that still had working communication systems. The images were horrific: cities burning, civilians fleeing, and Vorthak soldiers killing anyone they found. "This is a clear violation of the third sacred law," Lisa continued, her voice shaking with emotion. "The Galactic Council must intervene immediately." But the response was not what she had hoped for. Many delegates seemed more concerned about the political implications than the mass murder taking place. "The Vorthak are a founding member of the Council," pointed out Ambassador Reith of the Centauri Alliance. "We cannot simply declare war on them based on unverified reports." "These are not unverified reports," Lisa replied angrily. "These are live transmissions from our colonies as they are being destroyed." Keeper HFY had been silent during the debate, but now his crystal form began to pulse with an angry red light. Ancient memories stirred in his consciousness as he recognized what was happening. "The third law has been broken," he announced, his musical voice cutting through the arguments. "I can feel the disturbance in the cosmic order. The universe itself cries out against this violation." Some delegates looked confused by the Keeper's words, but others who understood the ancient texts felt a chill of fear. The sacred laws were not just moral guidelines. They were fundamental forces that maintained balance in the galaxy. Back on New Austin, Ben Hayes was making his final transmission to Earth Command. The command center was surrounded by Vorthak forces, and he could hear explosions getting closer as they fought their way through his defenses. "This is Captain Hayes. New Austin Colony," he said into the communicator. "The enemy is not interested in conquest. Repeat, they are not trying to capture territory. They are systematically killing every human they find. This is a war of extermination." Explosions rocked the building as Vorthak troops breached the outer defenses. Ben's remaining soldiers took defensive positions around the communication equipment. "Tell Earth that we fought to the end," Ben continued. "Tell them that New Austin will be remembered. And tell them that someone needs to make the Vorthak pay for what they've done here." The transmission cut off as enemy fire destroyed the communication array, but Ben's message had been received on Earth, along with similar final reports from dozens of other colonies. Admiral Kate Davis stood in the Earth Defense Command Center, surrounded by her staff as they processed the incoming reports. The scope of the disaster was becoming clear. Humanity was facing complete extinction at the hands of a species that had decided they were too dangerous to be allowed to exist. "Ma'am, we're getting reports of survivors reaching the inner colonies," reported her intelligence officer. "Some civilian ships managed to escape before the attacks reached maximum intensity." "How many survivors?" Kate asked. "Unknown, but early estimates suggest less than 10% of the frontier population escaped. Kate felt a cold rage building inside her. Humanity had always been peaceful, seeking to build and explore rather than conquer. They had followed galactic law and tried to be good neighbors to other species. And this was their reward: mass murder on a scale that defied comprehension. "Send orders to every Earth defense ship," she commanded. "All leaves are canceled. All ships are to report to duty immediately. And get me a communication channel to every human colony in the inner systems." "Ma'am, what are your orders?" asked her aide. Kate looked at the tactical display showing the destruction of humanity's outer settlements. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with determination. "We're going to war," she said simply, "and we're going to make sure the Vorthak regret the day they decided to mess with the human race." The breaking point had been reached. The oldest law in the galaxy had been shattered, and the universe was about to learn what happened when someone tried to exterminate humanity. News of the genocide spread through human space like wildfire. On every human world and every space station and mining colony, people heard the reports and felt something awaken inside them that most species had never experienced. It was not just anger or grief. It was something deeper and more dangerous. Admiral Kate Davis watched from Earth Defense Headquarters as her fleet expanded beyond anything she had ever commanded. Ships that should have taken weeks to recall were arriving in days. Merchant vessels were being converted to carry troops and weapons. Even civilian cruise ships were volunteering to serve as hospital ships or troop transports. "Ma'am, we have another group of volunteers requesting to join the fleet," reported Commander Jack Stone, her operations officer. "This time it's the entire mining fleet from the asteroid belts around Jupiter. They want to mount weapons on their ships and fight." Kate studied the reports coming in from across human space. Every military unit was moving toward the frontier without being ordered. Local militias were mobilizing. Even civilian ships were arming themselves and heading for battle. "Have you ever seen anything like this?" she asked Dr. Sam Johnson, who was serving as her advisor on alien psychology. Sam shook his head in amazement. "Never. Most species fragment when faced with extinction. They break into competing groups, each trying to save themselves. But humans are doing the opposite. They're uniting into one massive force." On the frontier world of Liberty Point, Colonel Danny Wright was organizing the evacuation of civilians when he received word that volunteers were arriving from across the sector. Ships that should have been fleeing to safety were instead bringing supplies and reinforcements. "Sir, we have 3 cargo ships requesting permission to land," reported his communications officer. "They're carrying weapons and volunteer fighters from the mining colonies." Danny looked out at his small garrison of 500 soldiers. They were supposed to hold off a Vorthak invasion force that would number in the thousands, but now civilian volunteers were arriving to help in the fight. "How many volunteers?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. The ships are still coming." By the end of the day, Danny's force had grown to over 2,000 fighters. They were miners, farmers, engineers, and shopkeepers who had never been soldiers. But they all shared the same grim determination. No more human worlds would fall to the Vorthak. Captain Ben Hayes had been presumed dead when New Austin fell, but he was very much alive. He had escaped the command center just before the Vorthak overran it and made his way to the underground tunnel system that connected the colony's major settlements. In the tunnels beneath New Austin, Ben found hundreds of survivors who had escaped the initial bombardment. They were scared and desperate, but they were also angry. Among them were former soldiers, police officers, and citizens who had decided they would rather fight than hide. "We can't take back the surface," Ben told the group of resistance leaders who had gathered in an abandoned subway station. "But we can make the Vorthak pay for every day they stay on our world." The resistance network grew quickly as more survivors found their way to the underground settlements. They began launching hit-and-run attacks on Vorthak patrols, destroying supply convoys, and gathering intelligence on enemy movements. Ben's reports, transmitted through hidden communication arrays, provided Earth Command with crucial information about Vorthak tactics and technology. More importantly, they proved that humanity could fight back even under the worst conditions. On Nexus Prime, Keeper Zeph-High was experiencing visions that had not troubled his kind for thousands of years. The ancient texts spoke of cosmic forces that maintained balance in the universe, but few beings alive remembered what those forces looked like when they were unleashed. The crystal being stood alone in the chamber of memory, surrounded by data crystals that contained the history of the galaxy. The patterns he was seeing in the cosmic energy flows matched descriptions from the oldest records, descriptions of what happened when the sacred laws were broken. "Elder, the council requests your presence," announced a younger keeper who had entered the chamber. "Tell them I will come," HFY replied, but his attention remained focused on the disturbing visions. "And prepare the archive of consequences. The council will need to understand what they are witnessing." In the Vorthak Empire, War Prime Ketivor was receiving reports that confused and concerned him. The human military response was unlike anything in their extensive database of conquered species. "The humans are not retreating to defensive positions," reported his intelligence chief. "Instead, they are advancing toward our forces. Every engagement shows the same pattern. They accept massive casualties to achieve tactical objectives." Ketvor studied the battle reports from the frontier. Vorthak forces were winning most engagements, but the victories were costing more than expected. Human forces seemed to learn from every encounter, adapting their tactics with impossible speed. "What about their civilian populations?" he asked. "That is the most disturbing development, War Prime. Instead of fleeing to safety, civilian ships are moving toward the battle zones. They appear to be supporting their military forces voluntarily." This was unprecedented in Vorthak experience. When they had destroyed other species, civilian populations had either surrendered or fled. They had never encountered a species where non-combatants actively supported their military. Dr. Sam Johnson was working around the clock to understand what was happening to his own species. The human response to the genocide was unlike anything in his studies of galactic civilizations. "Admiral, I think I understand what's happening," he told Kate Davis during one of their daily briefings. "Humans have something that most species lack, a cultural memory of near extinction." Kate looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" "Throughout our history on Earth, humans faced threats that could have destroyed our entire species. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, wars. We learned to survive by working together when extinction threatened. It's built into our culture." Sam pulled up historical records on his display. Most alien species evolved on stable worlds where extinction-level threats were rare. They never developed the cultural mechanisms that humans use to unite against existential threats. "So we're naturally better at responding to genocide?" Kate asked. "More than that," Sam replied grimly. "We're evolved to fight it, and once we're committed to that fight, we don't stop until the threat is completely eliminated." On the frontier, the first major counteroffensive was beginning. Admiral Kate Davis had assembled a fleet unlike anything humanity had ever fielded. Military vessels fought alongside converted cargo ships, mining vessels, and even luxury liners that had been hastily armed. The target was the Vorthak staging area at Kepler Station, where enemy forces were gathering for the next phase of their extermination campaign. Intelligence from Ben Hayes' resistance network had provided detailed information about enemy positions and defenses. "All ships, this is Admiral Davis," Kate announced over the fleet communication system. "Today we begin to show the galaxy what happens when someone tries to destroy the human race. Remember our fallen colonies. Remember our murdered families, and show these aliens that they made the biggest mistake in galactic history." The human fleet moved toward battle with a grim determination that surprised even their alien allies. Ships that should have stayed safely behind the lines insisted on joining the assault. Crews volunteered for missions that were essentially suicide runs. Back on Nexus Prime, the emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in the organization's history. Keeper HFY had presented evidence from the ancient archives that sent shockwaves through the assembly. "The sacred laws were not created by our predecessors," he announced to the stunned delegates. "They were discovered. They are fundamental forces of the universe itself, and breaking them triggers automatic responses that maintain cosmic balance." Lisa Carter watched as other species representatives struggled to understand what the Keeper was telling them. The implications were staggering. The laws that governed galactic civilization were not just moral guidelines, but actual forces of nature. "When the third law is broken," HFY continued, "the universe produces a response designed to restore balance. Throughout galactic history, species that commit genocide inevitably encounter forces capable of stopping them." "Are you saying that humanity's response is cosmically predetermined?" asked Ambassador Reith. "I am saying that the universe has rules," HFY replied. And those rules are about to be enforced in a way that this galaxy has not seen for 10,000 years. The awakening was complete. Humanity had discovered something about itself that even they had not fully understood. They were not just another species struggling to survive in a dangerous galaxy. They were the universe's answer to the oldest and most terrible crime, the deliberate extinction of an entire people. And now they were going to war. The human counteroffensive began with a fury that shocked the galactic community. Admiral Kate Davis led her massive fleet in an assault on Kepler Station that military historians would later call impossible. The human strategy defied every principle of accepted galactic warfare. All ships commence attack, Kate ordered from the bridge of her flagship, the Earth's Vengeance. Around her, hundreds of vessels moved forward in perfect coordination. Warships, converted cargo haulers, mining vessels, and civilian ships that had been hastily armed for battle. The Vorthak defenders expected humans to follow standard galactic military doctrine: cautious advances, minimal casualties, negotiated settlements when losses became too high. Instead, they faced something they had never encountered before. Human ships charged directly into the heaviest Vorthak fire zones. When vessels were damaged, their crews didn't retreat for repairs. They pressed forward, using their dying ships as weapons against enemy positions. The converted cargo ship Liberty Bell rammed a Vorthak cruiser, while her crew continued firing until the moment of impact. "Admiral, the enemy is requesting communication," reported Kate's communications officer, Lieutenant Amy Foster. "Put them through," Kate replied coldly. The image of a Vorthak commander appeared on the main screen, his scaled face showing confusion and fear. "Human leader, we propose a temporary ceasefire to discuss terms." Kate's response was swift and final. "The only terms are your complete surrender and withdrawal from all human space. You have 30 seconds to begin retreat, or we continue the attack." The Vorthak commander's red eyes widened in disbelief. "You cannot be serious. Your casualties are enormous. No rational species would continue fighting at such cost. You should have thought of that before you tried to exterminate us," Kate replied, then cut the communication. "All ships resume attack. Show them what humans do to genocidal aliens." Captain Ben Hayes had spent weeks organizing the resistance on New Austin, and now his moment of revenge had arrived. Human liberation forces had landed on the planet's surface, and Ben's underground fighters were emerging to support the assault. The battle for New Austin became legendary throughout human space. Ben led a combined force of resistance fighters and marine troops in a direct assault on the Vorthak command center. His converted mining equipment and improvised weapons proved devastatingly effective against enemy forces. "This is for every human child you murdered," Ben shouted as his forces overran the final Vorthak positions. The enemy soldiers, bred for conquest and intimidation, found themselves facing humans who fought with a ferocity that terrified them. When the Vorthak commander of New Austin attempted to surrender, Ben accepted, but on human terms. "You will stand trial for genocide," he told the captured alien, "and your empire will learn that some crimes cannot be forgiven." The liberation of New Austin sent shockwaves through the Vorthak military command. For the first time in their empire's history, they faced an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each battle, not weaker. Dr. Sam Johnson was documenting the human military response from Earth Defense Headquarters, and what he discovered amazed even him. Humanity was demonstrating capabilities that no other species had ever shown in galactic warfare. "Admiral, look at these adaptation rates," Sam told Kate during one of their briefings. He displayed charts showing human technological progress during the war. "Human engineers are reverse engineering captured Vorthak technology in weeks. Most species require years for such analysis." "What does that mean for our war effort?" Kate asked. "It means we're not just fighting with human technology anymore. We're fighting with improved versions of their own weapons, modified with human tactical innovations." The evidence was overwhelming. Human ships now carried shield generators based on captured Vorthak designs, but enhanced with human engineering. Human weapons incorporated alien energy systems but delivered firepower in ways the original designers had never imagined. "It's as if we're designed to learn from our enemies and turn their own strengths against them," Sam concluded. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council watched the war's progress with growing amazement and horror. Species that had remained neutral were beginning to question everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization. Lisa Carter addressed another emergency session, but now she spoke with the authority of a species that was reshaping the balance of power in the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire claimed they were eliminating a threat to galactic stability, she announced to the assembly. Instead, they have awakened something that will ensure such genocide never happens again. The footage she displayed showed human forces advancing through former Vorthak territory. But these weren't scenes of conquest and destruction. They showed human engineers rebuilding damaged infrastructure, human medical teams treating wounded civilians of all species, and human diplomats establishing new governments based on democratic principles. Humans don't fight for territory or resources, Lisa continued. We fight for principles, and we will not stop until those principles are secure. Ambassador Telnath of the Arcturus system stood to address the assembly. The humans are demonstrating something unprecedented in galactic history. They are winning not just militarily, but morally. Their enemies become their allies. Their conquered territories become centers of prosperity. War Prime Ketvor was experiencing his empire's collapse in real time. Every battle report brought worse news. Human forces weren't just defeating Vorthak military units. They were converting entire populations to their cause. How can this be possible? He demanded of his intelligence staff. We are the strongest military force in this region of space. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. His intelligence chief, Vraktar, delivered the devastating truth. War Prime, we have never faced an enemy like this. Human forces don't follow any known military doctrine. They seem to anticipate our tactics and counter them before we can implement them. And our occupied territories? Rebellion is spreading everywhere humans have landed. Our garrison forces are requesting evacuation from dozens of worlds. The local populations are joining human liberation forces faster than we can suppress them. Ketvor realized with growing horror that his empire was not just losing a war, it was facing complete dissolution. The very foundations of Vorthak power were crumbling as their subject peoples rose up alongside human forces. Captain Ben Hayes, now promoted to admiral, was overseeing the occupation of former Vorthak territories, but the human approach to occupation was unlike anything in galactic military history. Sir, the civilian population is asking about reconstruction aid, reported Major Lisa Park, his civilian affairs officer. Give them everything they need, Ben replied. These people were oppressed by the Vorthak for generations. It's time they learned what freedom looks like. Human engineers were rebuilding destroyed cities. Human doctors were treating populations that had been denied medical care under Vorthak rule. Human teachers were establishing schools that taught democratic principles and individual rights. The transformation was so rapid and complete that other galactic species struggled to understand it. Humans seemed to view military victory as only the beginning of their mission, not the end. Dr. Sam Johnson's research had revealed the fundamental difference between human warfare and that of other species. We're not just defeating the Vorthak militarily, he explained to a gathering of galactic military observers. We're defeating the ideas that allowed their empire to exist. What do you mean? Asked General Zefton of the Rigel Defense Force. Most species fight to achieve specific territorial or resource goals, Sam replied. Humans fight to eliminate the sources of the threats they face. We don't just want to stop Vorthak aggression, we want to make sure it can never happen again. The implications were staggering. Human forces weren't conquering the Vorthak Empire. They were transforming it into something that could never again threaten genocide against any species. Keeper HFY watched the war's progress from his crystal chamber on Nexus Prime. The cosmic forces he had sensed were reaching their culmination. The universe's response to the broken sacred law was nearing completion. The ancient texts were correct, he murmured to himself as he observed the energy patterns flowing through space. When the third law is broken, the universe produces a force capable of not just stopping the violation, but preventing it from ever occurring again. The human species had become that force. They were not just warriors or conquerors. They were the galaxy's immune system, activated by the ultimate crime of genocide. War Prime Ketvor made his final transmission to the remaining Vorthak fleets. His empire was gone, his military was shattered, and human forces were approaching his homeworld. All Vorthak forces, this is War Prime Ketvor, He broadcast on all military frequencies, "I order complete surrender to human forces. The war is over. We have lost." But even in defeat, Ketivor was beginning to understand something that would reshape galactic civilization. The humans weren't just victorious, they were offering something his species had never known. They called it justice, and for the first time in his life, Ketivor wondered what that might feel like. The price of hubris had been paid in full. The Vorthak Empire was no more, and in its place something new was being born. The surrender ceremony took place in the former Vorthak capital system, but it was unlike any military surrender in galactic history. Admiral Kate Davis stood on the bridge of her flagship as the last Vorthak fleet commander approached under a white flag of peace. "Admiral Davis," the Vorthak commander said, his voice heavy with defeat, "I am Fleet Prime Morthak. I come to surrender the remaining forces of the Vorthak Empire and to face judgment for our crimes." Kate studied the alien officer who stood before her. Just months ago, his people had tried to exterminate every human in the galaxy. Now he was asking for mercy from the species he had tried to destroy. "Fleet Prime Morthak," Kate replied formally, "I accept your surrender on behalf of humanity and the Galactic Council. But understand this, we are not here for revenge. We are here to ensure that what your empire did can never happen again." The terms of surrender shocked galactic observers. Instead of demanding tribute or territory, humans insisted on fundamental changes to prevent future genocides. War criminals would face trial, but ordinary Vorthak citizens would receive protection and aid in rebuilding their society. Captain Ben Hayes, now wearing the stars of an admiral, oversaw the occupation of the Vorthak homeworld. What he found there surprised even him. A population that had been told for generations that they were superior to all other species, now learning the truth about their empire's crimes. "Sir, we have delegations from the civilian population requesting meetings," reported Colonel Tracy Webb, his chief of staff. "What do they want?" Ben asked. "To apologize, sir, and to ask for help in building a new government." Ben walked through the streets of the Vorthak capital, accompanied by a small security detail. The city showed the scars of centuries of military rule. Massive monuments to conquest, administrative buildings designed to intimidate, and a population that seemed surprised to see their occupiers treating them with respect. At the central plaza, thousands of Vorthak civilians had gathered. Many carried signs written in basic galactic standard, apologizing for their empire's actions and asking for guidance in building a better society. An elderly Vorthak female approached Ben, her movements hesitant but determined. "Human leader," she said in broken standard, "my people have done terrible things. We were told it was necessary for survival. Now we learn it was only for conquest. Can you teach us a better way?" Ben felt a moment of profound emotion. These were the people whose military had tried to exterminate his species. But they were also victims of the same system that had created the genocide. "Yes," he replied simply. "We can teach you about democracy, about individual rights, about building a society that protects everyone. But first you have to want to learn." Dr. Sam Johnson was documenting the transformation of former Vorthak space for the Galactic Council. What he discovered challenged every assumption about post-war reconstruction. "The human approach is unprecedented," he reported to the Council's emergency session. "Instead of imposing their own government on conquered territories, they are helping local populations develop democratic institutions suited to their own cultures." Ambassador Telnath looked puzzled. "But surely they are extracting some benefit from their conquest." "None that we can measure," Sam replied. "Human engineers are rebuilding infrastructure at their own expense. Human doctors are providing free medical care. Human teachers are establishing schools that teach critical thinking and individual rights." "What do humans gain from this?" asked another delegate. Sam paused, considering his answer carefully. "Security. They are creating a galaxy where genocide becomes impossible, because the populations that might commit it have been educated to recognize and reject such ideas." On Nexus Prime, Keeper Zeph High was preparing for the most important ceremony in galactic history. The sacred laws had been violated and restored, but the cosmic balance had shifted in ways that required acknowledgement. Lisa Carter stood in the great chamber where she had once been merely an observer. Now she wore the robes of a keeper, the first human ever to hold such a position. The ceremony that was about to take place would reshape galactic governance for generations to come. We gather today to acknowledge a fundamental truth, HFY announced to the assembled delegates. The sacred laws are not merely guidelines created by our predecessors. They are expressions of cosmic forces that maintain balance in the universe itself. The crystal being's form pulsed with ancient light as he continued. When the third law was broken, the universe responded by awakening a force capable of not just stopping the violation, but preventing it from occurring again. That force is the human species. The implications sent shockwaves through the assembly. Humanity had not simply won a war. They had fulfilled a cosmic function that had been dormant for millennia. Therefore, HFY continued, by unanimous consent of the Keeper Council and the surviving sacred laws, humanity is granted authority to investigate and respond to potential violations of the third law throughout the galaxy. Lisa stepped forward to accept the responsibility. We accept this duty not as conquerors but as guardians. We will ensure that no species ever again faces the horror of deliberate extinction. Admiral Kate Davis addressed the reformed Galactic Council from the head table, where humans now held a permanent seat. The chamber that had once viewed humanity as newcomers now recognized them as the galaxy's protectors against its oldest crime. The war is over, Kate announced, but our mission is just beginning. We have learned that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. We will work with all species to build a galaxy where the strong protect the weak, where diversity is celebrated, and where the light of civilization can never be extinguished by those who choose darkness. The response from the galactic community was unprecedented. Species that had never worked together began forming alliances based on the human model of democratic cooperation. Trade networks expanded as trust replaced fear. Scientific cooperation flourished as knowledge was shared freely, rather than hoarded for military advantage. On the former Vorthak homeworld, now renamed New Hope, Admiral Ben Hayes attended the inauguration of the planet's first democratically elected government. The ceremony was conducted in multiple languages, representing the diverse species that now called the world home. The elected president was a young Vorthak female named Shentar, who had studied human political philosophy during the occupation. In her inaugural address, she spoke words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. We pledge to build a society based on justice, equality, and respect for all sentient life. We remember the crimes of our past not to be burdened by guilt, but to ensure they are never repeated. And we thank the human species for showing us that victory over evil is not achieved through conquest, but through the transformation of hearts and minds. Dr. Sam Johnson's final report to the Galactic Council became required reading in universities throughout known space. His conclusions about humanity's role in galactic civilization would influence political thought for generations. Humans are not conquerors in the traditional sense, he wrote. They are healers. When they encounter evil, they do not simply destroy it, they transform it into something better. They have shown the galaxy that the ultimate victory over darkness is not its defeat, but its conversion to light. The transformation was visible throughout former Vorthak space. Worlds that had been military fortresses became centers of learning and culture. Species that had been oppressed for generations now governed themselves with human guidance and support. Most remarkably, former Vorthak military officers served alongside human peacekeepers, protecting the very populations they had once been ordered to conquer. Keeper HFY stood in his crystal chamber, observing the cosmic energy patterns that flowed through the galaxy. The disturbance caused by the broken sacred law had been not just corrected, but transformed into something stronger. The universe had not simply restored balance, it had evolved to a higher level of harmony. Lisa Carter made her first official act as Keeper of the Third Law, the establishment of the Galactic Genocide Prevention Force. The organization would be staffed by volunteers from every species, trained in human methods of conflict resolution and democratic governance. Never again, she announced at the force's founding ceremony, will any species face extinction at the hands of another. This is not just humanity's promise. It is the galaxy's promise to itself. Admiral Kate Davis retired from active military service to become the director of the Galactic Reconstruction Authority. Her final order to the human fleet became the organization's motto: our greatest victory is not in the enemies we defeat, but in the friends we make from those who were once our enemies. The new galactic order was built on principles that humanity had learned through millennia of struggle on their home world. that diversity was strength, that justice was the foundation of peace, and that the greatest civilizations were measured not by their ability to destroy, but by their ability to create and protect. War Prime Ketvor, serving his sentence in a rehabilitation facility on New Hope, wrote memoirs that became a cautionary tale taught throughout the galaxy. His final words captured the transformation that had taken place. We thought strength came from the ability to destroy others. Tipo,